Okay, go ahead.
Okay. The refutation I'm arguing about is by Nicole Hardy. Her claim is that the gray wolf mechanism is a necessary part of the United States ecosystem. I'll be using the response that, one, she makes a generalization with the evidence, she has and makes an invalid claim. The second claim that she uses is irrelevant overall to the main claim, and the third one being that she states that the gray wolf doesn't affect the farmers, but this claim is overlooked and invalid. So my first response is that to her first secondary claims that wolves complete the United States ecosystem and have attributed to the regrowth of the native forest, and says that the wolves affect every part of the ecosystem. Well, I'll be challenging by saying that the first secondary claim used by the advocate makes a generalization with the evidence that makes the claim invalid. The evidence challenge. I use the evidence challenge. The evidence that the advocate provided focuses on Wyoming and Yellowstone only. The advocate uses a quote by Melissa Barton, a young journalist, stating that Wyoming scientists found that aspen cottonwood groves recovered, and uses another evidence by Melissa Barton saying that now that the elk are not eating the trees to the ground, the beavers have become more common in Yellowstone. The advocate makes the generalization with only two sightings from Yellowstone and Wyoming, which doesn't fully support the claim said by the advocate that the wolves complete the United States ecosystem and have attributed to the regrowth of the native forest. The second being the secondary claim is irrelevant to the overall main claim. I use the reasoning challenge. The evidence and claims used by this used to support the secondary claim being that the Endangered Act of 1973 being violated in Montana and Idaho doesn't seem in any way support the overall claim given by the advocate. The advocate's reasoning is that because these wolves are a necessary part of the ecosystem, something should be done because they are under the Endangered Species Act. This is a reasonable challenge because this does not add any support to the major claim said by the advocate that the gray wolf is a necessary part of the ecosystem. The advocate's examples used do not assist to the claim, like the secondary claim that in August 2011, the U.S. District Judge Donald Moley violated the Endangered Species Act when he used the Wyoming state line to determine which wolves are endangered. From the Bozeman Daily Chronicle News by Daniel Person, the evidence also used to support the secondary claim, showing that the advocate's reasoning in the secondary claim does not prove that the gray wolf is a necessary part of the United States ecosystem, but only saying that we should just do something about this because they are an important part of the ecosystem, which is irrelevant to the overall main claim. In response to the third secondary claim, the third secondary claim states that the gray wolf doesn't affect the farmers, but this claim is overlooked and invalid. I use the counterclaim. The evidence used to show how the life of the farmer is not affected at all by the gray wolf's presence as much as the other animals. And there is an incident that there was an organization that would replace the kill that the gray wolf has. And in the first evidence in the second claim, the quote uses that although wolves killed 500 sheep in Montana in 2003, coyotes killed 11,800, and disease, whether eagles, bears, and foxes even proved to be greater threats to livestock. The advocate leaves out on the second sentence of on the same paragraph that it says, yet wolves inspire even stronger feelings of anger in ranchers than grizzly bears, which contradicts to the third secondary claim saying that the wolves do not affect the lives of the farmers. In addition, in evidence for the third secondary claim, the advocate states that the vendors of the wildlife provide compensation for confirmed wolf kill. This program can compensate for the loss of livestock, but the program cannot replace the time that it takes to clean up. On the website of Defenders of Wildlife, a common question that ranchers ask that will ranchers be compensated for time and energy expended dealing with the livestock lost by wolves? And it was answered no. It is impossible to develop a program for that that insulates the ranchers from all wolf-caused impacts, which contradicts the advocate's claim that the wolves have little to no effect to the lifestyle of farmers. So in conclusion, I used evidence challenge, reasoning challenge, and the counterclaim to argue that the gray wolf is a necessary part of the ecosystem is invalid and misread by my
All right, well, I think this might work as a paper, but it doesn't work very well as a speech because it's so convoluted in the attempts to apply the fallacies and some of the terminology here. You need to make simpler declarative sentences for the secondary claims that you're responding to and then explain those. And sometimes it just feels like I'm stumbling through a complex analysis of why something fits into a particular category, and I don't know why that's particularly important. Most of the time, there is some element to what you were talking about, but it can be expressed in a lot more direct manner in an oral presentation. For instance, on that very last point, the argument that the advocate made that says that there's no reason for the ranchers to be upset about this because they primarily have been offered compensation by this organization for any of their lost livestock, and it isn't that much that happens anyway. Your response to it is, oh, well, you know, they've left off this tagline on here that says that it infuriates the ranchers even more than the grizzly bear. What that's got to do with the issue, I have no idea. The second part, I think, is a little bit more applicable because it basically says the compensation program will not compensate them completely. That's what the claim says, but that's not the way you express it. You say some convoluted thing, and I don't know, if people are listening carefully, they'll figure out what it is that it's being said here, but they shouldn't have to listen that hard. This should be, pretty straightforward. You need to, what you're doing is you are kind of going through and doing this analysis. You're forgetting that this is a speech. You need to talk to people and tell us, here's what they've said, here's why what they've said is problematic. All right? I'm not saying that your arguments don't necessarily have some validity, but I'm saying that they aren't very clear in an oral format, and that's a problem. All right, I've got to stop because